have to read the statement. To be able to conduct this meeting under Governor Lee's Executive Order 16, we need a motion to do this, so it is necessary to protect the public's health, safety, and welfare in the light of the COVID virus. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Blair? Commissioner Sherino?
Yes.
Commissioner P? Commissioner P?
He's frozen.
Yes.
There you go.
That is frozen. Vice Chair Pitsey?
Yes. On our agenda tonight, we have 3 of the RFIs left to review. If it's okay with y'all, we'll just take them in the order that they're on the agenda. The first one will be Waste Away. I'd like to we'll refer to Mr. Nolan to get his comments on what he thinks of Waste Away, and then we'll go to Becky to get hers, and then we'll open the floor up for questions and comments from the commissioners. Waste Away is on is the first one. It doesn't matter to me.
Waste Away. We have toured that facility. Most of you, I think, have. In North Tennessee, not too far from home. I like their process. I think it works really well. The problem they've had in the past is Mr. Chairman, we can't hear him at home.
We got to have a mic.
My wife tells me I'm too loud. Waste Away is close to home. They're in Morrison, Tennessee. We've toured the facility. I like their process. They have a select type of trash that they take, and they make a fluff or a pellet for a fuel source. They've not been able to develop a good market for that as of yet, but there's still a lot of testing going on. But as far as what they do, what that process is, I kind of like it. They're looking at doing a boiler system to use the fuel in a boiler to generate electricity. For that to work in our environment, we would probably be the fuel maker, and then some of our partners, the businesses around the town, would have the boiler and make their own electricity and go that direction.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nolan. Does anybody have any comments or questions from the floor about your homework of reading their article? Well, I know we've all toured it back probably close to a year ago, and it's very interesting. Mr. Serino.
Yes, I have read, seemed to be very interesting, and looks like for example, he suggests, for about 40 tons per year, so hopefully to get add more jobs, 25 jobs per year. That's wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Blair?
And Mac, you may know the answer to this. Of course, we know they make the pellets that will burn. The fluff, I think it comes out as fluff, and then they turn it into pellets. Is that correct? The fluff, is it compostable, or can it become a compost where it becomes soil again?
Part of the first thing that they did with it was a soil amendment. They're in the nursery capital of Tennessee anyway, but they developed that to where it can be a fuel source as well. But I think it still can be a soil amendment.
Is it, Mr. Nolan, is it not sterilized when it comes out of the process?
Yes, all the pathogens have been killed out of it.
Okay. Becky, would you care to comment on this company?
I would just reiterate what Mac has said. One of the things that is interesting is that they are able to divert 90% of the MSW waste stream from a landfill, and they do convert 70% of the raw garbage into the sustainable fuel. So those were two of the things that I thought were interesting. Again, it's an eco-friendly engineered fuel, can displace or replace coal and other fossil fuels. Not sure that they have an output buyer for those materials. They were, the update from 2019 was that they were EPA certified for their SE3 fuel. So that's the type of fuel they're actually the output, and it is considered a non-hazardous secondary material. So it's, the air emissions are good. Again, I'm not sure they have a viable buyer for the output.
I know when we toured it, they didn't have one at that time. They were still working on that, so they may still be in the same place.
Page 6, item number 5, or item number 6, actually, 5 and 6, they're looking at generating steam only. That steam would actually do the generation for electricity later on. 140,000 tons per year is roughly 466 tons per day.
Okay. Anybody have anything else on this company? Waste Away?
Steve,
Yes, sir, Mr. P.
when we toured them, I remember them talking about a facility they were going to open or had opened in Florida. Is that correct, Mac or Rebecca?
I think Florida is correct, but yes, they've been working on a facility.
I just wondered if we had any information on that facility, and if so, were they up and running?
I don't know.
That's probably
Well-
something they would post in their RFP, don't you imagine?
Mayor, I was thinking when we first had conversation with Waste Away, what was that area that the Czech Republic or what was it? Something that
Aruba.
Aruba.
On the island of
They
Aruba.
built a factory in Aruba, and then it wasn't funded, and they didn't.
Yeah, they built the plant in Aruba, and they had negotiated with the Dutch government, which Aruba is Dutch controlled, and something happened, and so they chose not to fund them after the plant was already built on the island. So it's been idle for 3 years now.
I know when we'd looked at them back when I was a county commissioner, their metals content in that fluff were a little too high as far as the composting thing, but I think that was their intake. So now they're taking in more of a different waste, and so it's a selection of waste that they're taking in now, and so they're getting a better output of what they have, but still they've got that same issue as far as use. But I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread when I first looked at it, but the use on the backside is where the problem is. And but I think this is a company that we need to look at if we can use it as a compost, or if we can use it as cover or whatever, or somebody else could or whatever. I think this is a pretty neat process, and like you say, it comes out and it's sterile trash. So if we can compress it and put in pellets and have a buyer for it or whatever, then I think that's the only difference in this company right here, because their process is pretty amazing.
Okay, thank you. Having been in the nursery business for several years, of course I'm out now, but I know several of the people in the larger nurseries in McMinnville up there close to where this company is located, and I have spoke with several of them about their compost they were generating for nurseries, because a lot of them up there are container divisions, plants in a bucket rather than B&B. And I think we would probably want to talk to several of those before we got real carried away, because a lot of them had different opinions of that.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the one thing that I took away from our meeting, and I want to bring it up to the commission, is we asked them for a plan. And I don't know if you remember, but he said that the plan would cost $50,000 that we would have to pay. Are y'all remember that? So my question is, if they want to be a serious contender in this, then that plan should be able to come forth for us to see. And that to me would show them that they're seriously want to be involved with Rutherford County. But I don't think it needs to be part of their bid so that we can see that they want to be a serious taker on that, then we we'll take it that way. That's how I look at it, because I really want to see that plan, because an RFP is one thing, but if they're going to take over the entire industry, the entire county, then we need to know that they're able to handle it and every single thing that they got to offer on it. Because I think just like the mayor just said, when we were there, and I think Mr. Piercy, you was with me, he did say there could be a problem with the buy. And he did say that. So I want to keep that in everybody to keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
Very good points. Mr. Nolan, do you have something to add?
Back on to what the Commissioner's just saying, where they were going with that 50,000, if that's the number, I don't remember the number exactly, was to see if we were serious enough to go through with it. They've had a lot of people that asked them to come up with proposals, and they spent a lot of time, money, and effort to do it, and nothing happens. So their deal was, hey, if you want us to come up with it, you pay for this up front, and if we move on forward, then that's part of whatever the cost is going to be.
Right. Anyone else? We'll move this one over to the RFP list then. Our next one on the agenda is Waste Alliance. Becky, do you have any comments for Waste Alliance?
I do. Just in looking at what they've presented, it would be a startup entity with the intent to be a public-private government organization. Typically, the P3 is public-private partnership. So this is a little different. Their philosophy is to consider waste as a resource. Their purpose would be, there's a process that they have actually confirmed that would work, sorting process, and then they would actually decontaminate the recycling stream with a process from Vanderbilt Medical Center. What I would say about this is they actually have got a plan on paper. They mentioned Stones River Recycling working with the Tennessee Rehab Center and basically connecting those two entities. They need a suitable location. They have a bank that was willing to do the financing. They have someone that was willing to do construction of the facility. They've looked at equipment, used equipment elsewhere. Recycle Rutherford would continue doing the education. And so overall, at the very end, I'm not sure what the expectation or the ask of Rutherford County would be. What I will say is basically it looks like this would be something they could do on their own without the county involvement. Obviously, residents can support it as they would any other service that's run or operated by either a nonprofit or a business in the community. But it looks like they have all the pieces here other than just saying, do we get county support? So I think it's more of a nonprofit, private partnership versus a standard or typical public-private partnership.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nolan, do you have anything?
Their process that they're talking about on the first page of their stuff, about halfway down, is talking about 10-ton process to do recycling for 10 tons per hour. A 2,080-hour work week, that's 20,800 tons a year. That's a little bit on the small side.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners? Mr. Blair?
Look like to me there's 80 plus reference sites being referred to, and I just wondered who would coordinate all of this. It just seems like a massive endeavor of farming out to different programs, and I just thought it was really, I don't know what the word I'm searching for, but I was surprised at 80 plus different references to this solution.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harris, you got anything?
Is this a startup? Is this a startup company? So they have no past or no nothing that we can fall back on or look at. It's just simply them wanting to start a company to address our needs. Would that be correct?
Says at the second sentence of their very first page, this startup entity began on April 9th of 2019 with the intention of becoming a public-private government organization and was conducted at Patterson Park and attended by over 100 citizens, companies, and government officials.
I know who this is.
Yeah, Mr. Boffman is a constituent of mine. He's a creative, entrepreneurial, very intelligent. He has done other startups. A lot of it has to do with ecology and recycling. So he's kind of prone towards that. And his event at Patterson Park was very well attended. All the players in this book were there, as a matter of fact. That's where I met Rockwood. Republic was there. A lot of guys were there. So he does have a lot of influence, a lot of energy. And he would, I think, Wayne, just simply want to be the manager of a new startup and bring in all the moving parts. So I would like to see him get a chance to speak to us at RFP, but he's got one of the longer rows to hoe, I believe.
Okay. Mayor Ketchum.
I was at that meeting with 100 people. I left early. After I left, this gentleman stood up and lied about me. Said that I brought a bicycle to him to fix in 1972, and I never paid him for it. I didn't own a bicycle in 1972. I had a car, and I was driving Tim Tishu. I was on scholarship. So for some man to stand up and trash me, and for people from Recycle Rutherford to stand up and defend me, which I was a founding board member of Recycle Rutherford, I will not recommend doing business with this man.
Thank you very much.
It is what it is. He called me out. This is my opportunity to pay him back.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know nothing about a bicycle, but I do know this, that I walked out of that meeting because he said that our mayor was taking kickbacks. And so that's not somebody I want to do business with. So I reject them from going to the RFP.
Mr. Dodd.
I was at the same meeting, and I may have had selective hearing because I do not recall any of the comments you're making being made from the public forum. So I may have been not as sensitive to it because I wasn't the one called out. So I'll defer to this body.
Mr. P., do you have anything?
I was at that same meeting, and I heard the comments. I don't recall all the mess about a bicycle. I do know several of us spoke to him afterwards, me being one of them, to let him know we weren't happy about the comments that were made. The only thing I will say is he has apologized. I don't know that he's apologized to our mayor or not. He realized that was the wrong place and the wrong time to make a comment like that. So I'll just leave it at that.
Looks like we have a mixed decision here. Mr. Harris, would you like to make a motion on your comment?
I'd like to make a motion that we do not send this to the RFP.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Becky, could you call the roll for us? It's the only fair way to do it.
Commissioner Dodd,
No.
Wait. Read the motion.
motion to not send Waste Alliance to the RFP process.
Thank you.
No.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino,
Yes.
Commissioner P.,
No.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Piercy.
No.
3-3.
Call to the mayor for the tiebreaker, or how do we do that? Motion fails.
Calls for a tie.
Okay.
Yes, motion fails.
So this one will not be moving on to the RFP.
Just a moment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
The motion not to move on to the RFP failed. Not saying that he should go to the RFP or not, but that motion failed, which was to not allow him to. That doesn't mean that he automatically doesn't get to go.
I felt like we had the ability here in this committee to determine who submitted the RFP and who did not when we started this process. Am I not right?
I agree with that, Mr. Chairman. What I'm saying is that vote was 3-3 tie. That motion to deny them going to the RFP failed. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm going to need a little help here, boys. Do y'all want to send this gentleman to the RFP pile or not?
I just need Mr. P to make his statement again. Robert, repeat yourself. I heard it both different ways.
I'm not sure what you mean. What I was stating was the motion to not allow this gentleman to go to the RFP failed, which would mean, in my mind, that he would automatically go to the RFP like the rest of them. Now, don't make a mistake. I was furious with this man for making those comments, and I think it was foolish on his part to do that because he alienated many people that would be making these decisions. However, we're looking for all options that we can get, and that's why I said no on this vote. Hopefully that explains my position there.
So the way I am understanding this, we are adding Waste Alliance to the RFP list, correct? We will move on.
Sure. I mean, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I hate to throw this out there, but past experience, the Commissioner P is right. The motion fails because it was a tie. So they would need a positive recommendation for him to go forward or to be shut down. And so basically just that motion failed is all there is. So for them to proceed on, you would need a positive recommendation to go forward. So that's where something has to happen by Robert's Rules of Order.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dodd.
do you recall that, did Chairman Kush say last meeting that to make a motion that everybody pass through, all 12 go, and we discuss? If that's the case, is this conversation moot?
There was a motion to let all 12 go to the, there is a motion to let all 12 go to the RFP.
Go. He will go.
So they would be included.
We talked about that too. I want to add just 2 cents to that. I apologize. But it was not just these, but any person turning in an RFP, because we may have some that did not turn in an RFI that could turn in an RFP that we don't even know about yet. And they would be into that pool as well. So it's not just these, but these would go forward plus.
Right. Thanks for your comments. And our last one on the agenda is Waste Management. I was very impressed with this company. Their size, their worth, some of their options they had, even to do hazardous waste at the doorstop. That was pretty amazing.
Yep, that is.
They run their trucks on a different fuel than most. kind of helps the environment and the economy. Becky, would you care to comment on this company?
So this was from Waste Management. Basically, they're one of the national, probably international if I double check, companies that had responded to the RFI. Basically, what they've offered is a mix of any services that you might want. What they've said essentially is, we're here to provide what Rutherford County wants. They do have a public education campaign called Recycle Right. Their overriding goal is to make recycling work, realize that they want to be transparent in how they have customers recycle, but ultimately recycling is a goal that they want to meet. They would like to develop a partnership with MTSU and Rutherford County to address environmental issues and solid waste management practices in general. Basically, they see that as a mix of undergraduate programs that would develop toward environmental solutions and research type work. Zero waste events are something that they've hosted in the past. They've worked with Arizona State University and Rutgers University. They do have a MRF in Nashville, which is at River Hills. They also have a transfer station on Antioch Pike. They have a food waste system, and this is actually on page 11. That just shows the process there in the diagram. That's something that is patented. So it's a system or a process that they facilitate, and they own the process. They do use compressed natural gas for their vehicles. They do have logistics experience in moving waste by rail or barge, if that was preferred as transportation alternatives. And they do recognize they have the largest network of landfills, and they manage nearly 100 million tons of waste a year. Basically, they do have 2 landfills in our region. One is in Lewisburg and one is in Camden, over in Benton County.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Nolan, do you have anything to add?
Page 8, they talk about the convenience centers and curbside collection of recyclables. Waste Management and Republic Services both are private companies, but both of which have done convenience center hauling for counties. We're experiencing that Rutherford County hauls their own, but when I started hauling garbage in 1989, the county convenience centers were hauled by both, at that time it was BFI and Waste Management, and it was $100 per load, flat rate. They also recommend recycling out in the county where it's not worth having curbside collection, that they continue to use the existing convenience centers. To be honest, I've worked for both these companies a long time ago, both of them, and both of them are good companies.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, comments from the floor? Mr. Dodd.
Just one point of observation, they have a at-your-door household hazardous waste collection, what I thought was very interesting. Is that common among the big companies to do that? Would Republic do that as well?
When I read that, just like Commissioner Piercy and I talked about it earlier, it was kind of a surprise. I wasn't aware anybody would offer that. I would be interested to see what the cost would be.
Don't assume it's free.
Mr. Blair.
You have these landfills. My understanding is TDEC only permits, 5 years out? Or I'm not sure that I understand how they license the expansion portion of these landfills. And the ones that are in the mid-state, like Lewisburg and Camden, and I think there's also in Montgomery County, there may be more. These landfills, are you familiar with how large they can expand if TDEC allows them to expand? Do you have any idea about what kind of growth these landfills in the mid-state are allowed to have or could have?
So in looking at the landfills we have in Middle Tennessee, you've mentioned the one over in Montgomery County. That's actually a landfill that's owned by Stewart and Montgomery County, so it's a government-owned entity. It's an authority. The 2 landfills that Waste Management owns, I've already mentioned. In conversation about Middle Point Landfill, you've heard a time frame. No one has said on date certain or in July of 2019 in the past, I'm saying that for a purpose, that the landfill will be full. The reason is there is an opportunity to control the volume that comes in, the type of waste that comes in. There is a certain footprint or a certain space that TDEC would offer a permit for at any given time when it's applied for. Basically, that space is what is allowed to be filled to a certain area on the ground as well as height. They're inspected on a regular basis. So ultimately, the answer to your question is any landfill can truly control and or balance what they bring in, regardless of volume or materials or otherwise. And I'll ask Mac if he wants to add to it, because he's got a whole lot more on the landfill operations side experience than I do.
Mr. Nolan.
Pat Flood was the director at TDEC. Now Lisa Huey is. Pat's moved on to something else. But I asked Pat point blank in a question of the top 5 counties, because it had been rumored, that there will never be another landfill permit in Tennessee. So I asked him point blank, is that a true statement? He said no. If somebody had the right piece of property and all the right things, we would have to permit something. So it requires you to have everything, all your dogs lined up. So can you have another landfill in the state? Yeah. If we go through with cleaning up our landfill like we're talking about, we're going to ask for a new permit to build a new landfill. We've got to bury the stuff that's already in it because we can't get rid of it somewhere else. So TDEC is waiting on us to make decisions, and they've already reached out. When y'all get ready to come see us, we'll help you in the permitting process to let you know what permits you're going to need to do whatever it is you want to do. So yes, you can do more permits.
Harris.
Becky, what landfills does Waste Management have?
In our Middle Tennessee area, they have 2. They have one in Lewisburg, and they have one in West Camden.
What's the life expectancy on both those?
I haven't looked at that lately, but I'll get you a number tomorrow when we meet.
Give you a rough number.
They also have Southern Services, which is
Lewisburg is roughly 10 to 12. And Camden is, the last number I looked at was 70 plus. I don't know if that's an accurate number or not.
70 plus years?
Yes. And then the third landfill they have is over on the west side of Nashville on Ashland City Highway, which is Southern Service. It's a construction demolition landfill. Yes.
I thought it was a breath of fresh air to find out there were actually 2 landfills that could handle some of our trash, if not all of our trash. Because in the past, we've kind of been led to believe they're going to all be full. It's going to be this or nothing. Going back to the expansion topic. They can expand on their footprint, correct? But they can't reach out and get new property, acquire new property from someone else to expand unless it's permitted. And doesn't that have to come through the county commission for an okay to expand beyond their footprint?
So when they actually file their application, there's a detailed map of the area that would be considered the footprint of the landfill. They have a certain area within that where they can actually operate, which is what you see when you talk about the face and the, in the areas that they're in now, as far as Middle Point. They do geology, they do water testing, they do all kinds of testing on the front end to get the permit. To get an expansion, they go through a similar process. It's on different land. I'm not positive that they have to get a new permit, but I will say to you that it does have to go through a very similar process because it's land, even if it's adjacent, it's still land that has not been permitted for landfill.
Well, I've heard ever since I sat on this commission that the Jackson law put it back in our vote to whether to okay a permit for a new landfill on new property. Is that correct or is that wrong?
Since Mac sits on your regional solid waste board, which is Cannon, Coffee, Rutherford, and Warren counties, I'm going to add, will you please speak to the Jackson law as far as specifically for that?
Mr. Nolan?
Can I add into that for the people that are watching? Can explain it so that they know what it is. Or I can review. Go ahead.
To answer your question, let's use our landfill. We won't pick on anybody else, we'll just pick on ourselves. Rutherford County landfill's roughly 288 acres is the deeded acres. We've got 72 and a half acres permitted to landfill space. So if we chose to have more acreage on our same property, we could do it. We could request an expansion. It would go through public hearings, and the Jackson law would not apply because it's already there. Does that answer your question there?
No.
Okay.
What I'm asking, can they go over the fence and buy John Brown's farm and just continue burying trash on it without us having any say-so over it?
Yes.
How is that possible if it's on new property?
As long as they're expanding their current permit. If they go for a brand new permit and then Jackson law applies, they go through all that process. Now, Jackson law basically says that this government, city of Murfreesboro, would be involved because the city limits is within 1 mile of the landfill, so they would also be involved in the Jackson law. So if it was a new entity, then they would have to come through this committee and that committee to be approved. The way it would work today, since the Jackson law does not apply, it would go through the Middle Tennessee Solid Waste Board, and they'd set up public hearings and all that kind of stuff and hold them. There'd have to be one for the county, at least one for the county, at least one for the city, and there'd probably be another one at Walter Hill right there close. But it'd be public hearings on the opportunity. But as far as the government being able to say, I don't want it in my backyard, it's too late, it's already here.
Do you know if the properties have to adjoin?
They would have to be continuous. If they had a break in it, and then they're going to have a new permit.
So a highway or a river would stop that? That's what I thought. Getting to my point, I know y'all have heard me preach about this a long time, but it's in my district. I've lived with it for several years. At the point we stand at now, my opinion, the commercial landfill in Walter Hill is pinned against the river, the Jefferson Pike, and the county-owned landfill road. Now they can expand up. They're working on what they referred to when I visited back a while back, their last sale. Well, it's really not. Their last sale is filling up very fast, and when it gets to a certain height, they're going to tie in to the mountain that you can see, and then it will all come one large mountain. And it's customary that when they want to even enlarge further than that, they will tear down their shop where they do service and all on their trucks, move it to another location because the shop actually sits in the footprint of that landfill. So they can use it, and they can come, I think it's either 100 or 150 foot to Jefferson Pike with trash. But they can't jump the river, they can't jump Jefferson Pike, and they can't jump the Rutherford County landfill road. And if we don't give our landfill away somehow, that's it. They can fill up what they've got, and I don't think they can get any larger than that. And that's just my thoughts on it. We hold the key to keeping it large or a mega sale sitting right here. I think we'll have to be very careful to maintain ownership of our county landfill. Even if we mine it out, we still need to hold title of property in hand to keep that boundary secure, one way or the other. That's just my thoughts. Anybody got anything else on waste management? Hearing nothing, we'll move them over into the RFP. That'll be 12. That's the extent of our list we have. I'd like to personally thank all 12 of these companies that sent the information in. They took a lot of time, a lot of work, a little money, and look forward to seeing their RFP. We have one other item on the agenda listed as professional services, and I'm going to turn that over to Mayor Ketchum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. There are probably two things, and before I get into the professional services, if I might, talk about what came out of purchasing about an hour ago. We had put out a bid for the second time to receive services to work on the Leanna Convenience Center, and again got no bids turned in. So the thought was with the purchase, we got one, right? Yeah, well, you are correct, but it might as well not be one. The one bid that came in extremely high, much 2 or 3 times more than what we had anticipated. Mac had $200,000 in his budget to clean that up and get everything set up and dress it up, make it the pilot was our goal. And it came in about 3 times what he had in his budget. So the thought process of the purchasing committee, because we're getting ready to go out to an RFP, is to recommend to this committee, to the full Public Works Committee, as we go forward with the RFP, is to put in our request to see if any of these companies, when they turn in an RFP, would they be interested in running and developing all of our convenience centers. So that was, so I throw that out for the committee to put that into the RFP process. They might have their own equipment, can come in and do it cheaper and better, but as all of you know, those are the complaints that we all get. Walter Hill is backed up on both sides of the road. Almaville is backed up. Smyrna is probably the busiest, isn't it, Mac? Down on Weekly is the busiest. Leanna, same thing. Got to get a deputy out there to direct traffic because it backs up, and so these probably need to be addressed to any of these companies that can come up with an idea of how we address our convenience centers in the future. And because with our growth continuing, it's not stopping. Even with the pandemic, people are still moving here for whatever reason. They want a piece of this action here. So I would suggest that we put that into the RFP process, Mr. Chairman. So going on to the item for professional services. Becky has been working with us for over a year and providing her expertise and services to us. She has been funded. I'm a member, sit on the board for GNRC, which the county pays membership for the county to be there. I'm the representative with the other mayor's caucus of the, how many mayors we have? 20. Well, it was 12 right in the middle area, but all of total 20 some odd mayors. Anyway, her position has been funded through TDEC through a grant. Well, TDEC, because of the pandemic and everything else, this year the legislature, everybody started peeling back, much like what we did. We started going to the different departments and saying, what is your needs? What are your wants? And then we got rid of the wants and said, now what can you, because things are going to be tight, what can you cut out of your needs? A lot of those grants were withdrawn from TDEC to all of our communities in the or all across the state. Vicky's, excuse me. Yeah. Becky's position has been eliminated because the grant runs out at the end of this month. I feel that Becky is very important to us to help us. She's helped us negotiate and get us through the RFI process. And I feel that we should contract with her to help get us through, write the RFPs and get us through that process. Don't know what the time limit is it's going to take us. I'm hoping that we can get through this in 3-4 months, whatever that may be. Once the committee, we have the RFP document, you approve it, we send it out to all these companies and even those who didn't turn in an RFI. I have checked with Nick as far as professional services are concerned. Usually that is, people think of architects, engineers, attorneys, etc., can be expended without putting that position out to bid. But in talking with Nick, if this position, and in Becky's case, she belongs to a professional organization, SAWANA. SAWANA is the National Solid Waste Authority national organization. Also, another key is whether you participate on an annual basis as a professional in continuing education to get continuing education hours. She does. Not only does she do that, she is the state president this year and next year? This past year. And this current year, she is the state president for Tennessee for the SAWANA chapter. As far as continuing education is concerned, not only does she take continuing education hours in the field of solid waste, she actually teaches it. She just last month went to North Carolina and she taught a SAWANA solid waste class over there. So very well qualified. I feel that meets the need of the term professional services, where it doesn't have to be put out to bid. She's unique. She's the only one in the mid-state area that we would know. And so I talked to her last week, asked her what she would charge us, because she now has to start paying her own insurance, her own retirement, everything else for the contract. She proposed either talking to her by the hour, which I didn't feel comfortable with. I'd rather talk to her about the project. The amount that she felt comfortable with would be $50,000 for the project for professional services. That is what was, I said, I'll bring it before the committee. Mike, I believe you have that in your budget for the professional services, just like we do when we do the drill testing, and we did this past year, and the committee approved that as well. So I wanted to bring that before the committee. I didn't want to take that authority myself to approve us negotiating with her and to let Nick drop a contract with her to get us through this RFP process.
Can you define project?
The project is developing the RFP, putting together, once the RFPs come in, developing the matrix and helping to define for the committee and the rest of the commission and those in the other cities to help us go through the process before a final decision is made. Help us make that final decision on who we want to handle our solid waste stream in Rutherford County for the next 40 years.
Okay, thank you. I have one other question. Back before you come on board, we worked with GBB.
That's correct.
Dumped several $100,000, and then we allotted 200 more thousand after that. And the best I can recall, there was either 140 or 160,000 left when we cut them off. Was that not right, Mac? So if that money is still available, that could help pay whatever.
I think that returned to the general fund.
Was it turned back in?
It would return to the solid waste fund balance.
Okay.
General fund.
So it's in your ending fund balance.
So this could very easily be some of that.
Right. It was money we did not spend in that budget, so it automatically rolled back into the solid waste fund balance. The mayor spoke correctly. Let me add to it just a little bit. We do have the funding in there for this. It was intended for contractors who already have, but we're early in the year, so we've not spent much money. So toward the end of the year, we may have to do a budget amendment to finish the year, but it shouldn't be much.
Mr. Harris?
First of all, I want to say, Becky is extremely valuable in this process. I mean, very valuable. She has been the liaison between this and the crazy world for us. $50,000. I think that I'm going to make a motion to approve this and send it to budget. And I'd also want to put in there that if this process takes longer than we anticipate, and there's more monies that are hours, and then come back to this committee and up it if we have to.
I got an email from, or a text from Nick this morning, and she had suggested $50,000 for 6 months. And then at the end of the 6 months, if it takes longer, we can sit down and negotiate that at that point. I suggested I didn't want to pay 50. I would suggest we do 25 at the beginning and 25 at the end. She just felt that there need to be some time limit. I think we need to push. It makes us push to not string this out. However, when we start bringing the other municipalities on board and their representatives, that's when you get into the politics of it could delay us longer. That's just I don't have a crystal ball to say that. All right.
The way those bills normally work, she'll do hers every how she wants to. But the ones that we've had in the past is we'll get a monthly invoice, and it will show the amount of hours worked by whomever is in their hourly rates and everything else. So to go along with what Commissioner Harris is asking, you'll be able to see how much you spent and have your declining balance. So you'll be able to see kind of where you are. GBB project lasted a little over 18 months. It was scheduled to have been 11. So historically, we don't do things very quickly, so we'll have to be conscious of that.
I'm safe to say that if I make a motion that we approve this for $50,000 over a 6-month period of time, would that be in line with is it going to be in line to what this organization of hers wants with us?
Is that agreeable with you, Becky? I think Becky's committed to us, no matter what we do.
Okay, well, I'm going to make a motion that we send this to budget in terms of $50,000 over a 6-month period to be revisited after 6 months if we had to increase it or end it.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? And we have a second. Do we need to have comments? Becky, did you have something you wanted to say before we voted?
I just want to say that I appreciate you all. I've appreciated the opportunity. This is actually a project I had conversation with Mac and Joey Smith over at the city probably 10 or 12 years ago. So it's an honor to work with you all and to be part of the process. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Very well. Mr. Blair.
I think her participation is critical for us to get this exactly right, because the decision that we make is going to go far past us. Mayor, you and I will be long gone, and this will affect not only our children, but our grandchildren, and maybe
Absolutely.
even their grandchildren.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Note.
That's what Mayor Ketron was asking. If you're going to do $50,000, we always have to do purchase orders ahead of time. So we could do a $25,000 purchase order. Once that one's almost used up, then you do another one, and that kind of thing.
Well, but that's where I went back to the professional services. We don't have to, I guess we would on a purchase order, but we don't have to bid it, right?
Mr. Sereno.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to support the remark of Commissioner Blair. I'm glad that she had done so wonderful job in so many months and solved a lot of problems.
Mr. Dodd.
Just that I would fully anticipate your motion was that at the end of 6 months, we would reevaluate with the opportunity to extend it.
Yes.
I think our goal was to have a decision by January. wasn't it?
That's my
That would
goal.
be good.
Michael, I hope we don't have to talk about it.
And the only reason I would suggest it, I'm thinking implementation.
Oh,
So the implementation could be,
I was just
I
calling
hope
back
we're done in
something that had
6,
been
yeah.
said earlier, maybe January we'll be up and rolling, with an idea, not actually doing it, but to have something decided on. Well, I don't really think there's any need to vote, but we got to make it legal. Becky, call the roll.
Commissioner Harris,
Excuse me.
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Vice Chair Piercy.
Yes. That concludes what is on our agenda. Do we have anything else? We've got a meeting scheduled for tomorrow night at 5:30. We have another meeting scheduled for the 26th at 5:30. And the meeting tomorrow night evidently will be to start the RFP process of getting it on paper. Bring all your ideas, questions, and suggestions. We're going to need them. Anything else? This meeting is adjourned.